I gave up on my husband when he lost his job, and now I'm the one struggling. The day Ethan came home with the news, I was standing in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. I remember the way he paused in the doorway, his shoulders slumped, his tie slightly askew. I lost my job, he said flatly, as if saying it quickly would make it hurt less. My knife stopped mid-slice. What do you mean you lost your job? They're downsizing, he explained, running a hand through his hair. I was part of the cuts. For a moment, I just stared at him, the weight of his words settling heavily in the air between us. Then, as the reality hit me, my chest tightened. Ethan, we have bills to pay, I said, my voice rising. What are we supposed to do now? I'll figure it out, he said, his tone pleading. I'll start looking tomorrow. We'll be okay. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. At first, Ethan did everything he could to reassure me. He sent out resumes, went on interviews, and even picked up part-time gigs to help with expenses. But as weeks turned into months, the cracks began to show. I don't know what else to do, he admitted one night, his head in his hands. Nobody's hiring, not for what I do. Then maybe you should try something else, I snapped, frustration bubbling over. Anything else? We can't keep living like this, Ethan. I'm trying, Clara, he said, his voice breaking. Do you think I want this? Do you think I like feeling like a failure? I didn't answer. But in my silence, the damage was done. The strain on our marriage grew heavier with each passing day. Ethan's once confident demeanor faded, replaced by a man who seemed defeated at every turn. And I, impatient, resentful, started to pull away. You used to believe in me, he said one night after another argument. I believed in the man who had ambition, I shot back. The man who didn't give up. I haven't given up, he shouted, his voice filled with desperation. I'm just lost. But I was already too far gone to hear him. The final blow came when I met Julian. He was a client at the marketing firm where I worked, charming and successful in all the ways Ethan no longer seemed to be. At first, our interactions were professional, emails, meetings, polite small talk. But slowly, they became something more. You're incredible, Clara, Julian said one afternoon as we lingered in the office after hours. I don't know how your husband got so lucky. I laughed, a hollow sound that carried more bitterness than joy. I wouldn't call him lucky. Julian's eyes softened, his hand brushing lightly against mine. You deserve someone who sees you for who you are. Someone who can give you the life you deserve. His words were like a spark in the dark, igniting something I hadn't felt in years. Leaving Ethan was the hardest decision I had ever made, or at least, that's what I told myself at the time. In truth, it was the easiest way out. I can't do this anymore, I said, standing in our small living room with my suitcase by my side. Ethan looked up from the couch, his face a mixture of exhaustion and heartbreak. You're really leaving? I need stability, I said, my voice trembling. I need a partner who can pull their weight. He stood, his eyes searching mine for some trace of the woman who had once promised to stand by him in sickness and in health. Clara, I'm trying. You know I'm trying. It's not enough, I whispered. At first, life with Julian felt like a dream. He whisked me away to fancy dinners, bought me expensive gifts, and promised me a future filled with everything I thought I wanted. You're a queen, Clara, he would say, pulling me close in the glow of candlelight. And I'll treat you like one. For a while, I believed him. But cracks began to appear in the perfect facade. You're late again, I said one evening as Julian walked through the door, reeking of whiskey. Work ran over, he replied dismissively, tossing his jacket. That's what you said last week, I snapped. He smirked, pouring himself a drink. What's the big deal? You're not still mad about dinner, are you? The big deal is that you promised me things would be different, I said, my voice shaking. Maybe you should have stayed with your husband if you wanted different, he said coldly, draining his glass. His words hit me like a slap, and for the first time, I saw him for who he really was. The months that followed were a blur of arguments, broken promises, and growing regret. Julian's charm had worn thin, replaced by a man who was as selfish as he was unreliable. One night, as I sat alone in the apartment we shared, scrolling through photos on my phone, I came across a picture of Ethan and me from years ago. We were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, the world at our feet. Tears blurred my vision as I realized how much I had taken for granted. Ethan wasn't perfect, but he had loved me deeply, unconditionally. And I had walked away. Now, as I struggle to make ends meet on my own, the irony isn't lost on me. I gave up on my husband when he lost his job, convinced I could find someone better. But here I am, alone, struggling, and haunted by the memory of the man who had once been my rock. Ethan deserved better than the woman I became. And now, as I sit in my tiny apartment, counting pennies to pay rent, I can only wonder if it's too late to make things right.